All right, all right. We are back. I'm your host, Garrett Bacon. Welcome to another episode of The Tactical Businessman. Today's topic, why? Why does it all matter? Back when I was working as a police officer, I'd just been promoted to detective, and I got put on an undercover squad. In this undercover squad, we were tasked with very simple things. Buying drugs and or other illegal items from bad people, criminals. Like that was it. And it was really exciting for me just because of, a few different reasons. One, it's something I always wanted to do. Two, where I grew up, I grew up in a small border town, and it was heavily influenced by the drug trade, like the drugs coming up from Mexico. And I saw a lot of friends, a lot of acquaintances, a lot of people around town getting arrested, trying to live the high life for a short time and then crashing and burning. A few people shot and killed. And so it was a very different take on this than most people have. And so when I became a police officer, one of the things that I always wanted to do was work undercover. It was always something that appealed to me. So it was about 9 years in, I think it was, when I started down this path of working as an undercover detective. And I remember being super excited, but at the same time being super nervous and anxious and stressed. Why? Because I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to impress. I wanted to outperform. Like I had all of these predisposed notions of what it was that I needed to do to be successful. And one of those was literally outwork everybody. That was gonna mean that I was successful. So when I arrived literally with 2 files already ready. I had people that I wanted to investigate. I had an informant. I had all these things like ready, right? And so then when I started, my sergeant at the time, being wise that he was like, hey, you're going to do nothing but shadow this guy for one of the senior detectives for a month. You're just going to shadow him. You're not going to take any cases. You're not going to do any investigations. You're just going to shadow him, sit in his passenger seat and see how he does things. And I remember being like stressed and pissed, and I'm like, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? I've been doing this job for 9 years. I'm already capable of doing all this stuff, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And I remember that first month getting like super worked up, and the senior detective, and I won't name his name just because, privacy, but his senior detective was a good friend of mine. He was like, hey, bro, like, slow down. There's always enough time. There's always enough bad guys. Just slow down. And I just couldn't get it through my head. And I remember by the time I was finally able to go do my own thing, create my own cases, I was worked up. I was anxious. I was like stressed, like I'm behind everybody now. So I tried to like force the issue. And I would come into work already anxious and stressed out. Like, oh, I got to do my case. Otherwise, I'm not performing. If I'm not performing, they're going to kick me off this squad, and I'm not good enough. And all these thoughts were going through my head, and I was just completely stressed and anxious and worked up. Now, I started to, of course, have success, but the success that I was having just didn't seem to be enough success. Like, it just didn't matter what I was doing. It just wasn't enough. Or at least in my eyes, it didn't feel like it was enough. Why? Because I was comparing myself to the guy who had 12 years experience. And here I am with like 1 month experience, right? You all know exactly what can happen in 12 years. A lot. You get a ton of real world practice. And so here I am trying to keep up with the big dogs, if you will. And I'm failing. At least in my eyes, I'm failing. Why? Because my cases aren't as big. Because my drug buys aren't as large. Because my seizures aren't, as we don't seize as much drugs and or money as they do on their cases. We're not arresting as many people, so on and so forth. And I got to this point where I was about 6 months in, where I remember we were sitting in the office, and another one of my coworkers sitting next to me, and I got really, really hot. And I'm just wearing shorts and a t-shirt. And I was really, really hot, and I started to like hyperventilate, and I'm sweating, and he's like, dude, are you okay? I'm like, dude, I don't feel good right now. Like, it doesn't feel good. And I remember getting up to walk around and then coming back and sitting down, and I just kept getting hotter and hotter, and my heart kept beating faster and faster. And then like, that was it. Next thing I remember, I'm laying on the floor in the fire department bay, which happened to be next door to this police station. And I've got a bunch of electrodes, hooked up to me. And I got a firefighter telling me, hey, man, like, it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. And I had no idea what had happened. I thought I'd had a heart attack. And they loaded me up in the ambulance. They take me to the hospital. And at the hospital, they run all these tests and everything on me. And doctor comes in finally. He's like, hey, well, good news, you didn't have a heart attack. And I was like, well, that's good. Here I am thinking I was dying. He said, but what you did have was you had an anxiety attack. And I'm like, what the hell is an anxiety attack? And he goes, you literally worked yourself up into a frenzy to where your body couldn't handle it anymore. So the self-defense mechanism of the body was to literally shut down. And that's what your body did, shut you down. And he said, we can't have you doing this. It's detrimental to your body, so on and so forth. So we're going to give you some medication. Medication being Prozac. How many of you guys have heard of Prozac, right? For bipolar people, for all these other people. But here I am, a relatively healthy man in his 30s, early 30s, like taking Prozac. And I remember thinking that these stupid pills aren't going to do anything for me. And so I go back and I started to, use the pills, but it wasn't doing anything for me, at least in my eyes. Why? Because I was still stressing out and worried about everything. Mind you, all the side effects that come along with it, which we won't even get into that right now. But I started to abuse the drugs. In other words, I was taking way more than I should have been taking. And all it was doing was making me panic and making me worry and making me think that people were out to get me. And like all these things were happening that literally were not helping me get done what I needed to get done. And I remember when I finally stopped, I was in this space of not knowing, like, okay, what do I do now? And luckily I had a friend not inside of the police department. He was a businessman. He was a very successful businessman. And he started to guide me down this path of, hey, this is what you can do when you get into the situation where you're feeling like you're overwhelmed, where you're feeling stressed out, when you're feeling the walls closing in, if you will. And he started to give me some of these tips and these tricks, so on and so forth. And for the last probably 8-9 years, I've been using this much more now than I did back then, because I didn't really understand it back then, but much more now than I did back then. And it really helped me start to prioritize the things that were important, at least in the business world, right? At that time, I still didn't know how to apply things to my personal life because I was too proud, because I was too arrogant, and frankly, because I had no desire to fix anything. But you've heard the stories, and if you haven't, go back and listen to the episodes about how that all went. But really what I want to focus on now are these 4 things that I started to implement in my life that really helped calm me down, that really helped me focus at work, and really helped me to get more things done. And it sounds counterproductive because I was working less, but I was getting more things done. Now, how was that? Well, that's what I want to share with you. So number 1, the first thing that I had to do was list things out. I was running probably 8 to 10 cases at a time. And that's a lot of work. It's like trying to focus on 8 to 10 different products at the same time, 8 to 10 different customers at the same time. It gets to be overwhelming. So the first thing that I had to do was list out everything that needed to be done for all of these cases. In other words, for all the things that I was doing. And after listing it out, I had to ask myself, one question, which was, why? Why am I doing this? Sounds like a pretty simple question, right? But when you sit down and spend some time thinking about it, it's actually a very profound and deep question. Why am I doing this? You know, for me, I had to ask myself if the amount of work that I was putting into a case relative to the payoff at the end was actually worth it or not. And if the answer was no, guess what I had to do? That's right, stop doing it. This is where the challenge comes for you as a businessman. Every single day you're bombarded with what? First of all, you have your own to-do list. And then second of all, you either have employees, customers, clients, vendors, so on and so forth, who are coming at you with things that need to get done or help that they need. And so you end up with this mishmash list of things to do. So if you could take some time, 10, 15 minutes, write out all the things you need to do, and then ask yourself why. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? For every single item, you're going to see that all of a sudden the things that you thought were important really aren't. Why? Because they're not taking you where it is that you want to go. Let me say that again. If the things that you're doing aren't taking you where you want to go, odds are you probably shouldn't be doing them. In other words, spending an hour on the phone with a customer just because you like him and you want to keep his business, but that 1 hour is keeping you from going out and finding new clients, I don't know. You probably shouldn't be doing that. You should probably be focusing on the task that will bring you more income. That's why you're in business. So with every single task, first list it out. Second, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Third, if it isn't aligned with where it is that you're going or what it is that you're trying to do, guess what you need to do with it? Well, one of a couple of things, right? But odds are you need to get rid of it, or you need to delegate it, or you need to do something with it. But doing it is not helping you. It's causing increased stress, increased anxiety. It's taking you further away from where it is you're trying to go. So stop doing it. And the fourth and most important step is literally focus on what's left. When I did these with these cases, I had, like I said, a ton of cases. It narrowed down to like basically 2 cases. I had a couple that had no priority, so I just said, okay, if I have time, I'll work on them. But 2 cases. And now with that increased bandwidth, I was able to focus on those 2 cases and become what? Successful at executing those 2 cases. And after those 2 cases, then there was 2 more cases. And after those 2 cases, it was 2. And so I got to this point where I got really good at what I was doing. Why? Because I was able to eliminate the things that didn't matter, focus on what did, and it eventually started guiding me down the path of where it was that I wanted to go. It's the same thing in business. I use this every single week, sometimes daily. I get bombarded with things that need to get done, both of my own creation and of those around me. And so I have to take this time and say, hey, what's really important to me right now? Is this taking me where I want to go? Yes or no? And if it isn't, guess what I have to do? That's right. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. If you want to be able to maximize your time, you need to learn how to delegate when and where it's spent. That's it. Whatever your long-term focus is, that's where your short-term actions have to be. Why are you doing the tasks? If it doesn't line up with where you're trying to go, quickly and without emotion, delegate it or get rid of it. You think your biggest problem is procrastination, but your biggest problem is you can't seem to say no to everything that looks like an opportunity. And that's what's ultimately holding you back. All right. That is it for today. As always, you got any questions? You got any concerns? Anything you want to talk about, reach out to me. I'm always available. I'm always here to listen. But look, I want to make sure that you understand something. Everything that I talk about here is really good, right? And if there was an opportunity, I'm sure you could like emoji heart or smiley face or thumbs up. But that's not what it's about. It's about implementing it into your life. because life is about winning the daily war. You win the day, you win the week. You win the week, you win the month, you win the month, you win the year. And then you win at life. But it starts with every single day. Set yourself up for success. This is another tool that you can use to help you have the success that you want in your life. Now start using it. All right. Remember, it's easier to stay ready than it is to get ready. Stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one.